Esoteric Treatise of Theurgy by Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 1. Theurgy, Gothia, and Spiritualism. Theurgy is a science which allows us to invoke the ineffable beings of the superior worlds, to receive sublime teachings from them. Let us distinguish between Theurgy, Gothia, and Spiritualism. Gothia teaches us how to invoke the purely tenebrous entities. Then, the invokers remained enslaved by the powers of evil. Spiritualism, through certain passive subjects, allows us to communicate with life beyond death. However, only the shadows of the deceased come to the spiritualist centers. It is good to know that those shadows of the deceased make up the psychological eye. Therefore, very rarely does the soul or the spirit of one who has passed away enter the body of a medium. Only the psychological eye of the disembodied penetrates the medium's bodies. The shadow of the disembodied loved ones, that is all. The shadows of the deceased, manifesting themselves through the astral, mental, and physical bodies of the mediums, produce the dislocation of the mental and physical vehicles. The consequences can be insanity, paralysis, etc. After this short preamble, we will fully enter our superior study of theurgy. The theurgist must be capable of acting consciously in the astral body. The theurgic invocations are carried out in the astral plane. Invocations of high theurgy can also be done in the most elevated worlds of cosmic consciousness. The theurgist must be skillful in the astral world. The theurgist has to live consciously in the astral body. Therefore, before entering the field of theurgic invocations, we should first of all learn to enter and leave the physical body at will. In reality, the astral body is the suit of the soul. Within the astral body, we have the mind, the will, the conscience, and the spirit. There is an instant when we can abandon our physical body at will. That instant is when we find ourselves falling asleep. In those moments of transition between vigil and sleep, every human being, wrapped in his or her astral body, escapes the physical body. There is a clue which allows us to consciously escape from the physical body to work in the superior worlds. The Divine Master, Jesus Christ, utilized this clue when he studied in the Pyramid of Khephren. The Great Master used to lie on his bed, face up, horizontally, with the soles of his feet placed on the bed and his knees raised. Next, the Master raised his arms above his head until the palms of his hands touched each other. Then he extended them to the right and left, and finally, crossed them over his chest, thus forming the microcosmic star. Next, the Master lulled himself to sleep, vocalizing the powerful mantram Pharaon. That mantram is vocalized in 3 syllables, as follows: Pharaon. The Master vocalized this mantram many times, until he fell asleep. Then, in the internal worlds, we awaken consciousness. We feel subtle. We float deliciously. This procedure, simple and easy, is a marvelous key, which will allow us to awaken consciousness in the superior worlds. When we have become conscious in the internal worlds, then we can dedicate ourselves fully to the works of high theurgy. Dr. Crum advised, also, that for the exercises of leaving in the astral, it was very convenient to perfume the room or bedroom with good incense, or rose essence, etc. Chapter 2. The Conjuration of the Seven. One of the most powerful conjurations that King Solomon left us is the Conjuration of the Seven. We decided to investigate, personally, the entire esoteric content of the Conjuration of the Seven. We carried out these investigations of high theurgy in the superior worlds. We needed to be fully conscious of the essential content of that prayer which the Solomon the sage left us from ancient times. Many are the magicians who, as much in the past as in the present, utilize these conjurations. However, we must know their essential content so as to work consciously in the rituals of high magic. Because of all these reasons, we needed to investigate in depth the occultism of the Conjuration of the Seven. Let us see it. Conjuration of the Seven of Solomon the Sage. In the name of Michael, may Jehovah command thee, and drive thee hence. Shavahoth. In the name of Gabriel, may Adonai command thee, and drive thee hence, Baal. In the name of Raphael, begone before Eliel, Samgabiel. By Samael Zabaoth, and in the name of Elohim Jibber, get thee hence, Andromlech. By Zachariel et Sachamelech, be obedient unto Elva, Sana Gabriel. By the divine and human name of Shaddai, and by the sign of the pentagram, which I hold in my right hand, in the name of the angel Anael, by the power of Adam and Eve. Who are Jochava, begone Lilith. Let us rest in peace, Nehema. By the holy Elohim and by the names of the genii Cashiel, Sehaltiel, Aphiel, and Zerahiel, at the command of Oriphiel, depart from us, Moloch. We deny thee our children to devour. By carefully examining this conjuration of the seven, our beloved readers will be able to see the style in which it is written. Certainly, the task we had ahead was pretty expensive, arduous, and difficult. Spiritualism, with its mediums, frankly, would not have been of any use to us, because we wanted to see, touch and feel all the entities that feature in this conjuration of Solomon the Sage. The Goethic circle of black evocations and of pacts would also not have been of any use to us, because none of us wanted to fall in the abyss of black magic. Therefore, only High Theurgy could resolve all these problems. We began by studying in the superior worlds the first conjuration, which to the letter says, in the name of Michael, may Jehovah command thee, and drive thee hence, Shavahoth. Michael is the genie of the sun, and every advanced occultist knows that. Jehovah is the ruler of the moon, governs Eden, and awaits us all in paradise. We lacked, then, to know Shavahoth. Who could that strange personage be? Why did one have to conjure him in the name of Jehovah? Why did one have to name Michael in this conjuration? What tenebrous entity could this be? Undoubtedly, all these enigmas had us uneasy. We wanted to clear up this matter. We did not want to continue being automatons, repeating a conjuration whose content we ignored. It was then that we decided to investigate. We left our body at will. In our astral body, we went by a solitary road. As we walked, we invoked Shavahoth, the mysterious personage mentioned by the great King Solomon. We must confess that we had to utilize the grand and supreme appellation of Peter of Apono. The result was marvelous. On the side of the road, we met a solemn, Olympic sculpture. It seemed to have been carved by a Praxiteles. Its face was similar to that of the Greek Apollo. The curvature of its feet, the profile of its hands, the entire eurythmy of that sculpture, could compete with the Venus of Milo. Nevertheless, there was something strange on that very beautiful sculpture. That precious human effigy was dressed in a robe of a bloody color which, forming beautiful pleats, exotic and fatal, extended down to its feet. We comprehended that we were before Jehovah's opposite pole. We were before the frightening and terrible Shavahoth. Extending the right hand towards that malignant and seducing beauty, we conjured it with a loud voice, saying, in the name of the Tetragrammaton, I conjure thee Shavahoth. Immediately after pronouncing these words, we saw, with great surprise, that beautiful and malignant sculpture become terrible angry with us. Then, advancing towards us, attacked us with his horrible hypnotic power. He insulted us tremendously. His words were really repugnant, proper only of the great harlot whose number is 666. The fight was terrible. We had to defend ourselves with all our spiritual forces to drive away that terrible demon of malignant beauty. We finally succeeded, and the frightening personage that had taken the form of a harlot hid within a tavern where only glasses and bottles of liquor were seen on the counter. Here you have black magic. Here you have the abyss. After having known this personage of the darkness, we returned to the physical body. By the color of his tunic, by his filthy language, and by all the activities of that sinister personage, we arrived at the conclusion that this was the exact antithesis of the Lord Jehovah. Now, we wanted to delve into something more. We wanted to know the concrete labor to which Shavahoth dedicated himself. On another night, we, the investigators, abandoned the body with the purpose of talking more closely with the antithesis of the Lord Jehovah. As usual, we made use of the grand appellation of Peter of Apono. After a few moments, we arrived at a street of an unknown town. A multitude of people came and went there and everywhere. As we appealed, we could easily appreciate the power of the verb. The verb was transforming everything. We changed planes. We submerged ourselves in those atomic regions where the princes of darkness inhabited. Observing carefully, we noticed that someone approached us with decided and firm steps. It was Shavahoth. That sinister personage was dressed in his blood-colored robe and came towards us. We then conjured him, saying, "In the name of Jupiter, the father of the gods, I conjure thee, Shavahoth, te vigos Koslim." These mantrams have a tremendous effect. Shavahoth, as if wounded by a mortal ray, raised his arm as if to defend himself. We advanced a few steps, approached him and stretched out our hand to him in a friendly gesture. He then, in a rude tone and using names applicable only to prostitutes, asked us about our wives. We, with a severe spirit, and without letting ourselves be carried away by any emotional or sentimental reaction, answered that person aged that our wives were quite well. Thanks. Next, we manifested to him that we wanted to be his friends. The sinister personage showed himself satisfied, and then walked with us towards a tenebrous cavern. We walked until we reached the peak of a high mountain. There he had his tenebrous cavern. There he taught his disciples. He manifested to us that he lived in Germany, that he had a physical body, that he worked for the Grand Black Lodge, that he was impersonating a war veteran, etc. Certainly, we found Shavahoth's cavern full of German disciples. Those disciples came to say cavern in their astral body. Shavahoth taught them the doctrine of the Nicolaits. That tenebrous doctrine taught a sinister system of sexual magic, during which the magician commits the crime of ejaculating the seminal liquor. The result of those exercises is always disastrous. The fiery serpent of our magical powers, then, instead of rising, descends to the atomic infernos of man and becomes the tail of Satan. The Lemurian Atlantean monsters practiced this system of black sexual magic. The sorcerers of Atlantis also practiced it. In that old, vanished continent existed the cult to the goddess Kali. Later, after the submersion of Atlantis, the sect of the goddess was established in India. That is the sect of the stranglers. The fanatics of that sect strangled their victims. The English police had to intervene many times, in India, to judge that type of criminals. That is Tantrism. In our Western world, many were the instructors who, after having been in the White Lodge, went astray in the horrible tantric path. Therefore, we arrived at the conclusion that Shavahoth is an adept of the shadows, the antithesis of the Lord Jehovah. He is the head of a fatal legion. He works for the tenebrous fraternity. One has to conjure him in the name of Jehovah. Some days later, we, the investigators, in the astral body, decided to invoke this pair of opposites of philosophy, Jehovah and Shavahoth. We made a circle around us. The two invoked beings attended our call. The Lord Jehovah, like a white dove, of immaculate whiteness, floated above our heads. Shavahoth, his antithesis, kept himself out of the circle. He was dejected. The presence of the Lord Jehovah wounded him to death. Jehovah works for the chastity of the world. The divine wisdom of Jehovah is enclosed in the arcane Esv. That is the key of Eden. That is the key to the ark of science. Shavahoth works for Tantrism, for the doctrine of the Nicolaits, for the fatal science, which converts men into beasts. Chapter 3. The Second Invocation. After we had finished the esoteric investigation of the first invocation of that great Conjuration of the Seven, which in another time King Solomon, the sage, bequeathed us, we decided to investigate the second invocation, which to the letter says as follows. In the name of Gabriel, may Adonai command thee, and drive thee hence, Baal. We know that Gabriel is a lunar angel. We know that Adonai is a precious angel. However, we ignored who Baal could be. Why does one have to conjure him in the name of Adonai? These were mysteries to us, and we had to unveil them. One night, in astral body, we invoked Baal. Baal was a tenebrous king who lived in a cavern in the Gobi Desert. There he instructed his disciples. He taught the black magic of the sublunar spheres. Adonai, the son of light and happiness, was his opposite. These two antitheses of philosophy were intimately related to the moon's rays. Moreover, Baal's presence was greatly tenebrous. Crowned as king. His eyes separated and firm. His thick eyebrows flat-nosed, his lips thick, his face round. He was dressed in the robe of a black magician. We did not make much friendship with him. His character was unapproachable. On another night, we the investigators invoked Adonai, son of light and happiness. A boy a few months old attended our call and attacked us with a sinister force. We had to use all our psychic and spiritual forces to try to overcome him. However, everything was useless. That child was endowed with an omnipotent force. Someone told us to stretch out our hand to him in a friendly manner. So, we did. We stretched out our hand to him. With the spirit of shaking hands. He then fraternally corresponded and shook our hand. This was the guardian of the threshold of the angel Adonai, who in spite of immense perfection, still conserves the guardian of the threshold, the psychological I, the reincarnating ego which we must all decapitate and dissolve to incarnate, within ourselves, the internal Christ. How difficult it is to achieve perfection an angel as precious as Adonai, and yet, it is difficult to think that he still conserves the psychological I. Bunch of old memories, on another night, the most profound night, the most silent one, we, the investigators, invoked the angel Adonai. The precious angel sent to us with other angels, a divine gift, and a medallion, which hung from a golden chain. Said medallion confers upon us the power to switch cosmic planes instantaneously. With that precious treasure we can enter any department of the kingdom. We became very good friends of the precious angel Adonai, the son of light and happiness, Zenoni's master. We all know that Zenoni received cosmic initiation in the Tower of Fire of the Chaldea of the Sages. Since then, Zenoni received the elixir of long life and was able to conserve his physical body during millions of years. The great master Zenoni let himself fall because he fell in love with an artist of Naples. The guillotine was the result of his error. There died the great master. We the investigators learned many things from the angel Adonai ineffable wisdom. During a certain occasion, Adonai, the son of light and happiness, and the master Zenoni came to us. One of us, somewhat surprised, awaited. Then both Adonai and Zenoni told the surprised investigator to cut with his sword a strange thread that was on the ground. The surprised investigator, between perplexity and happiness, obeyed and cut the thread with his flaming sword. Once this work was accomplished, we understood that he had been liberated from a fatal sorcery, from a bad current, from an act of black magic. Someone had harmed him with those evil arts and had caused him great harm. Then, the master Zenoni and Adonai, together, healed the investigator's astral body and cured him. As for the king Baal, while obeying supreme orders, we had to submerge him into the abyss in subsequent works. That tenebrous personage used his powers to cause great harm to mankind. In reality, Baal is the head of the legion, and one had to conjure him in the name of his antithesis, Adonai, the son of light and of happiness. To end this present chapter, we warn the imprudent to never invoke the tenebrous ones, because that is terribly dangerous. We found ourselves in the need to invoke those tenebrous ones to investigate the conjuration of the seven of King Solomon the Sage. It was an important case, and we had to do these types of investigations. Those kinds of tenebrous ones are invoked with the conjuration of Peter of Apono. Nevertheless, we warn you that the angels of light, the ineffable beings, cannot be invoked with the appellation of Peter of Apono. Angels are invoked in the name of the Christ, by the power of the Christ, by the glory of the Christ. May the imprudent be careful. May they not commit the error of invoking demons. This could lead them to disgrace. We the investigators were able to carry out these investigations because we are very skillful in the use and maneuver of the astral body. However, we always found ourselves in great and terrible dangers. Chapter 4. The Third Invocation. After we had investigated our previous invocations, we decided to study the third invocation of the Conjuration of the Seven, which, to the letter, says as follows: In the name of Raphael, begone before Eliel, Samgabiel. When we investigated Samgabiel, do not confuse with Saint Gabriel, we met a terrible demon of the world of the cosmic mind. The angel Eliel is his exact divine and ineffable opposite. On a certain day, we invoked Raphael. Then the Grand Master attended our call. The Master carried the trident of the mental world in his right hand. His face was rosy like fire. His white beard draped over his chest was filled with majesty and light. The Master's wide forehead indicated his profound wisdom to us. One of us asked the Grand Master for something. The Master answered saying, "You no longer need to ask for anything." Really, he was an initiate with complete knowledge of the science of good and evil. It will cause great astonishment to our readers to know that the human soul of the Grand Master, the Bodhisattva Raphael, has a physical body. The serious thing is to know that the Bodhisattva is fallen. However, he is struggling terribly to rise. We should distinguish between the Master and his human soul. The Master is the internal God. The human soul of the Master is now fallen. Many extremely dangerous demons live in the world of the cosmic mind. On a certain occasion, we entered a very luminous temple of the world of the mind. All of us, the investigators, were functioning with our mental body. In that temple, there was a venerable group of elders. They were dressed in the robes of masters. They wore sandals. Their white hair fell over their shoulders in beautiful curls. Their long white beards and their wide foreheads gave those elders a magnificent appearance. We, the investigators, believed that we were in a temple of white magic, before a group of holy masters. That was the belief we had. One of those elders pronounced an ineffable speech. He spoke sublime things. He spoke divine things. He spoke of love, goodness, beauty, charity, etc. Suddenly, the Grand Master began to delicately touch the problem of sex. And then, in a sublime way he said, "Grow and multiply. The sexual act is nothing bad. Seminal ejaculation is not bad. It is necessary for reproduction, because God said, grow and multiply." This and many other terms were used by that venerable elder to defend seminal ejaculation. It was then that we began to suspect the sanctity of that saint. We began to doubt, could this elder be a black magician? However, on looking around us, we only saw venerable elders, splendorous light, ineffable things. It even seemed a sacrilege to us to doubt this master and such a sacred place. But the mortifying doubt, in spite of everything, in spite of all our reasoning, continued to afflict us deeply. That was when one of us, wanting to clear up these doubts, stood up and launched these phrases: "Long live the Christ! Down with Yahweh!" Christ and Yahweh are the two antitheses. Light and darkness. White and black magic. Yahweh was that demon that tempted Christ on the mountain. Yahweh is a terribly perverse demon. He is the chief of the black magistracy. When we shout, "Long live the Christ," and "Down with Yahweh," the Black Lodge then turns against us, full of anger. Black magicians adore Yahweh. They follow Yahweh. That is what happened that night in that temple in the world of the mind. When those holy men of venerable and august appearance heard that "long live" and that "down with," something horrible happened. The holy face of that venerable elder that spoke suddenly changed color completely, became angry, transformed itself. We then saw the unsuspected. That countenance became horrible. Those holy elders unmasked themselves. They were true princes of darkness, terrible black magicians of the world of the cosmic mind. They insulted us with phrases and words appropriate of the great harlot whose number is 666. They attacked us violently. We had to unsheathe the flaming sword to defend ourselves. Later, we left that den of black magic. which before we had thought was a temple of sanctity. Chapter 5. The Fourth Invocation. Continuing our investigations of High Theurgy, we will study the fourth invocation of the Conjuration of the Seven. This invocation is the following, by Samael Aun, and in the name of Elohim Jiber, get thee hence, Andromlech. Who could Andromlech be? Who could Elohim Jiber be? Why are these genii featured in this fourth petition of King Solomon? All these mysteries made us uneasy. Only by means of High Theurgy can one carry out this type of investigation. Samael is the genie of Mars. But who could Elohim Jiber and Andromlech be? One night, we left in the astral body. We entered a subterranean cavern. Once there, by making use of the grand appellation of Peter of Apono, we invoked Andromlech. A personage as black as coal finally appeared in the middle of the cavern. A gigantic personage, tenebrous and horrible. We extended our right hand towards that horrible monster, and said, "In the name of Jupiter, the father of the gods, I conjure thee Andromlech. Te Vigos Coslim." The result was formidable. That demon, mortally wounded by the terrible ray of divine justice, remained under our dominion. It was then that Andromlech spoke and said, "I did not know that it was you calling me. If I had known it, I would have come earlier. What is it that I can do for you?" These words of Andromlech seemed to come from within the profound caverns of the entire earth. It seemed that this terrible and powerful voice came from the very inner center of the earth. We then courageously spoke to Andromlech, telling him, "Give me your hand, Andromlech." The tenebrous personage approached us and gave us his hand. Then the author of this book returned to his physical body. Then, that demon, with his bloody red-colored robe, passing over the roof of his room, exclaimed, "You were afraid of me. You were afraid of me." I answered, "I am not afraid of you, Andromlech." I returned to my body. That is all. On another night, a group of brothers, in our astral body, met in a temple to continue our investigation in relation with that mysterious personage, Andromlech, mentioned by Solomon the sage in the Conjuration of the Seven. We, the brothers, all made a great chain to invoke Andromlech. We used Peter of Apono formula. After a period of invocations, we heard there, in the distance, Andromlech's answer. A strange wind which froze us profoundly. A hurricane reached us. That personage modulated the vowel M. He gave that letter a special intonation with low and high tones. The brothers remained firm in the chain. Suddenly, one of the brothers who directed the chain exclaimed with a loud voice, saying, "Brothers, do not release the chain. Remain firm. Andromlech is coming." Some moments later, a giant appeared at the door's threshold. That giant was about 3 or 4 meters tall. That strange personage wore a black robe. A white strip fell obliquely from his right shoulder to his left thigh, both on the front and the back. He had a huge medallion on his chest. He carried a scepter of command in his right hand. That personage had a wide forehead, big blue eyes, from where the starry heaven was reflected, a straight nose, fine and delicate lips, white hands, with cone-shaped fingers. Long hands of a Jesus of Nazareth, or like that of Francis of Assisi. The brother, who was leading the chain, releasing it, went to meet Andromlech, to embrace and greet him. Next, turning towards the brothers of the chain, he told them, "Brothers, I introduce to you my friend Andromlech." All the brothers were shaking. One of them, unable to resist the terrible electric force which Andromlech's eyes radiated, left hastily. He ran away terrified. That marvelous giant, full of great decency and of courteous and delicate manners, stretched out his hand so as to courteously greet each and every one of the brothers. Next, he went towards a desk and sat there at the desk. It was quite interesting to contemplate that strange giant, possessor of such courtesy, of such decency, and such harmony. What did cause pity was to see behind that marvelous giant the profoundness, in other words, the memory of a fatal shadow. However, the scepter, which that giant carried, the medallion on his chest, and all his gestures, were really of the White Lodge. Already seated at the desk, Andromlech called the brother who led the chain and gave him advice with the following words. Try, brother, to place yourself in the best possible atmosphere. Dress decently. Comprehend that we are angels and that, therefore, we have the full right to live well. The interlocutor brother asked permission from Andromlech, saying, Master, excuse me, while I go seek the brother C, the brother who had left the room earlier. It was then that the brother who directed the chain went, in the astral body, to all the countries of the earth, seeking the brother who had fled. He wanted that brother to speak to Andromlech. Everything was useless. The search was fruitless. Brother C was nowhere to be found. Where could he be? Where could he have gone? Enigmas. Enigmas. The brother, director of the chain, returned once again to the room where Andromlech was. However, it was no longer possible for him to talk to that marvelous giant, because many people in their astral body were consulting him. Then, the brother who directed the chain returned to his physical body. Once in his body, that brother rose very early in the morning, had breakfast ere it left for the street. Where was he going? Well, if you do not know it, beloved reader, know it now. The director of the chain went in search of brother C. That brother was an old businessman, and it would be very easy for the director of the chain to find him in his store. Certainly, he found him there. Brother C was busy in the commerce of his store. The director of the chain, after courteously greeting his friend C, questioned him, saying, Well, brother, why did you flee from Andromlech's sight? Then brother C answered him, In reality, I was unable to resist Andromlech's look. He looked at me with a terrible electric force. I could not bear it. I was afraid and I fled. It was then that the director of the chain told brother C, Man, I looked for you in the astral body everywhere, and did not find you. Brother C responded, You did not find me, because I returned to my body. All that Sunday, the two men were discussing the matter of Andromlech. That giant was an enigma to the two investigators. Could Andromlech be a black magician? Enigmas. 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 Actually, that entire matter was enigmatic. The two men decided, each on his own, to investigate Andromlech. After some time, they came to the following conclusion. The spirit who attended the chain was really the master Andromlech, a master of the White Lodge, a master of greater mysteries. It so happened that this master sent his bodhisattva, the human soul, to reincarnate. Remember that a soul is possessed. A spirit is. That bodhisattva reincarnated in China. Unfortunately, that bodhisattva let himself fall. Here is the mystery of the human double personality. One of the greater mysteries of occultism. Bodhisattvas fall because of sex. They fornicate. They ejaculate the seminal liquor. And then, the fiery serpent of our magical powers, the Kundalini, descends towards the atomic infernos of man. That is how bodhisattvas fall. The bodhisattva of the master Andromlech fell. The worst thing about it was that the bodhisattva dedicated himself to black magic. The result of all this was that the master picked up his will soul, human soul, fifth principle of man, causal body, or the superior manas of theosophy. Only the inferior quaternary made up of the physical, etheric, astral, and mental vehicles was left living in China. That inferior quaternary is, in fact, a soulless man. A Kabbalistic cortex. An empty abode where the soul no longer lives, where the immortal principle of every man no longer inhabits. Those Kabbalistic cortexes are abodes of the psychological I, Satan. Actually, those are the demons. Therefore, that man transformed himself into a demon. When the investigator invokes Andromlech in the astral, either Andromlech, the demon, or Andromlech, the grand spiritual master, can appear. Much later, we, the investigators, invoked Andromlech and Elohim Jiber. They appeared at our call. We then saw the two antitheses face to face. Elohim Jiber is the antithesis of the tenebrous Andromlech. Elohim Jiber is a full archangel of the ray of Mars. He carries the flaming sword at his waist and is a terribly divine male. When Andromlech attacked us, we were able to overcome him easily. Then, lying in his bed of pain, he told us that, in China, he used a small ampoule named Kanakapal, with which he instantly awakened clairvoyance in his disciples. Of course, this type of clairvoyance only lasts as long as the effect of the injection. That is all. The demon Andromlech is a businessman in China. Economically he well. That personage of darkness live in the abyss. A friend of ours, after hearing this story, asked us the following. Therefore, Andromlech no longer an inner being? When he disembodies, he only ascends to the causal plane? He has a body in another reincarnation. We had to answer this friend the following. Andromlech no longer has a body. It is precisely the giant who came to the chain that is the inner being of Andromlech. That inner being no longer has any relationship with the tenebrous man who lives in China. When the man Andromlech disembodies, the soulless monster will not be able to rise to the causal plane, nor to the superior worlds, because he is soulless. He is a Kabbalistic cortex, an empty house. He does not have a soul nor a spirit. Those Kabbalistic cortexes sink into the atomic infernos of nature. Throughout the centuries, little by little they degenerate and lose strength. Later, they take the form of horrible animals of the abyss. Later, the form of plants, and finally, mineral form, which, in the process of disintegration, will be deprived of intelligence. At last, they become cosmic dust. That is the second death of which the Apocalypse talks about. The fornicators, after all, must pass through the second death. Fornicators are people of black magic. All he who ejaculates the seminal liquor is a fornicator, and a sure candidate for the abyss and the second death. Andromlech will become cosmic dust in the abyss. Disintegration in the abyss is very slow and horrible. Many times, those tenebrous ones sustain themselves during eternities, during entire cosmic days and nights. Little by little they disintegrate and finally die. Andromlech will not have a physical body again. He is a terribly perverse demon. The internal master suffered horribly and, of course, will have to pay a great karma for having created that demon. Our interlocutor then asked us the following question. Is the inner being guilty of the evil deeds of Andromlech and of the karma he will have to pay? We had to answer him as follows. The inner being is an immolated lamb and will have to pay for that tantric X personality. The inner being, the inner master, will have to reincarnate to pay the karma of his X personality. The law is the law. That master lacked the strength to control the tenebrous human personality. When the spirit overcomes matter, he is victorious. That is all. Chapter 6. The Fifth Invocation. The reader, who has closely followed the entire course of our investigations, will comprehend that spiritualism, with its mediums or necromancy, with its laboratories, would not have served us to carry out these transcendental invocations of High Theurgy. Unfortunately, there are many students who would like to see, hear, touch and feel these things, but their complementary faculties are damaged. Many are the people who would like to consciously live in the astral body and suffer the unutterable because they do not achieve it. The clue, which we gave in our first chapter, with the mantram Pharaon, is formidable. The important thing is to never give up, to persevere, not to become tired, until one succeeds. During the normal hours of sleep, every human body is outside the physical body. The inner being intervenes in the internal worlds to make us comprehend integrally all the processes of daily life, for example, business that we carried out during the day, words that we uttered, emotions we experienced, etc. Unfortunately, we live in an unconscious manner daily. We do not comprehend the triple reach, physical, psychic, and spiritual, of each of our actions, of each of our words, of each one of our daily sentiments. Then the inner being intervenes during sleep to make us see in a symbolic form the triple reach of all the events that we realize during our daily lives. Therefore, human souls move, during sleep, in that symbolism. Those symbols are the so-called dreams. If we lived completely conscious of each action of our daily lives, if we comprehended the triple reach of each act of our daily lives, if before going to sleep we were to do a retrospective exercise to make total and absolute conscious conscience of a determined defect, then that defect disintegrates. We remain free of it. The important thing is, therefore, that the dreamer awakens in the internal worlds during normal sleep, during nocturnal sleep, without mediumisms, without hypnotisms, etc. After this introduction to our present chapter, let us continue with the investigations of the Conjuration of the Seven. After having taken care of the previous investigations, we decided to study the fifth conjuration of the great King Solomon in the superior worlds. Let us look at it. By Zachariel et Sachamelech, be obedient unto Elva, Sana Gabriel. We already know that Zachariel is the genie of Jupiter. What we ignored is who Elva and Sana Gabriel were. At first sight, we comprehended that they were the two antitheses of the ray of Jupiter. We had to call Sana Gabriel with the appellation of Peter of Apono, because he was a tenebrous entity. Since one had to conjure him to drive him away, one could logically deduce that he was a tenebrous one. As for Elva, it was inferred that he was a luminous angel, since he is utilized to drive away Sana Gabriel. Therefore, Elva could not be invoked with the appellation of Peter of Apono. We would have to call him in the name of Christ, by the majesty of Christ, by the power of Christ. We, in the internal worlds, began to invoke Sana Gabriel. We made the invocation in the astral body, within a small hall. We called many times, and Sana Gabriel was delayed. A narrow corridor, a long passageway full of darkness, led to the small room where we were carrying out the invocation. After a period of patient waiting, we felt the steps of someone who was coming in the narrow corridor. Certainly, those footsteps were not very pleasant. The sounds of those steps were not of shoes or sandals. It was a different sound. It was the sound of claws and nails, like that of a tiger or of an evil beast. We remained firm. We waited for Sana Gabriel to come a little closer. We were prepared to conjure him with force. Suddenly, a strange being came to the threshold of that dwelling. We looked and saw such a horrible face, which only the imagination of a nervous madman, or of an idiot, would be able to conceive. It would be better for us to see corpses coming out of their tombs at midnight, than to contemplate Sana Gabriel's tremendously horrible face. Frankly, that diabolical beast's terrible aspect surprised us so much that it was necessary to return to our physical bodies instantaneously. We were not afraid of him. His horrible ugliness surprised us. Everyone who follows the black path arrives at that sad state. Therefore, with certainty of spirit, another night, we once again did the invocation of Sana Gabriel in our astral body. This time we invoked him at one of the street corners of a large city. Sana Gabriel came at our call. But, anxious to talk to us, he took the shape of a normal man. He looked like a banker, and arrived talking to us about money. He gave us the prize-winning number of the lottery, according to him, that we might buy it. With these temptations, he pretended to attract us to his sphere of tenebrous influence. Lottery is pure black magic. An entire population is robbed so as to enrich a few. We did not allow ourselves to become imprisoned in that little golden cage. We were only interested in knowing this tenebrous aspect, this shadow of Jupiter. Later, on another night, we decided to investigate Elva. This angel is love, altruism, charity, chastity, and sanctity. Chapter 7. The Sixth Invocation. The path of High Theurgy allows us to study the great mysteries of life and death. However, it is necessary to learn how to consciously travel in the astral body. Those who do not as yet have that faculty need to acquire it. A daily, vigorous training is necessary to obtain this faculty. After returning to the body, we awaken in bed. Many students commit the error of moving in their bed at the precise instant of awakening from their normal sleep. With this movement, the astral body becomes agitated and memories are lost. On awakening from his normal sleep, the student of occultism should not move. He should remain resting, close his eyes and do a retrospective exercise to minutely remember all those places where he was in the astral body, all those words he heard, said, etc. For this kind of investigation, the mediums of spiritualism are useless. It so happens that mediums do not have enough mental equilibrium. Mediums are victims of tenebrous entities. The mental body is dislocated in mediums. By this, we mean that the mental and astral bodies of the medium are dislocated. With these two vehicles in this condition, mediums do not possess the mental equilibrium, the exact logic that is needed to investigate the causes and effects of nature. We already know that the natural laws are wisely processed. Every effect has its cause. Every cause is the effect of another superior cause. Oftentimes, we have listened to many unbalanced individuals who say that they communicate with entities from beyond. Usually, those subjects are mediums. It is necessary to know that the investigator of the superior worlds should possess a faultless mental equilibrium. The true investigator is profoundly analytical and vigorously exact. We are mathematical in investigation and very demanding in expression. After this introduction to our present chapter, we will narrate to our readers the investigation we made with the 6th invocation of the great King Solomon. That invocation is the following. By the divine and human name of Shaddai, and by the sign of the pentagram which I hold in my right hand, in the name of the angel Anael, by the power of Adam and Eve, who are Jachava, begone Lilith. Let us rest in peace, Nehema. Who could Lilith be? Why was it necessary to conjure those tenebrous ones in the name of the angel Anael, the angel of love, and by the powers of Adam and Eve, who are Jachava? We wanted to know the angel Anael, the angel of love. We, a group of brothers, in the astral body, invoked the angel Anael in the name of Christ, by the majesty of Christ, by the power of Christ. We made the invocation in a chain, inside the patio of a house. It was the aurora of a morning. With a great voice, we called out to the angel of love. After some time, we saw passing over the patio of the house, very high above, a few ineffable birds. Birds of silver. Birds of gold. Birds of fire. One of them, the most beautiful, was Anael, the angel of love, who, in his astral body, had assumed that beautiful figure. All of us exclaimed, "Here comes Anael, the angel of love." We waited for those marvelous and divine birds to descend in the patio of the house where all of us brothers made the invocation of High Theurgy. However, those birds passed in rapid flight and did not descend in the patio of that house. Why? What could have happened? Suddenly, someone knocked 3 times, rhythmically, at the door of the house. We released the chain and, in our astral bodies, went to open the door. A beautiful boy, dressed in a pink and blue tunic, was at the threshold. Other children followed him. This beautiful boy was Anael, the angel of love, the angel of the morning. The angel of Venus. The hair of that child looked like a golden cascade falling over his ineffable back. He looked like a 12-year-old boy. His face, as rosy as the aurora, was of ineffable and perfect facial features. His whole body was rosy, like the aurora. The boy brought flowers in his arms. We knelt down so that he would bless us. And he did. In the presence of that beautiful boy, one only feels desires of playing, one feels he is reliving his infancy, one feels he becomes a child. The director of the chain, on his knees before the angel of love, consulted him about something. The boy answered him with great wisdom. We carefully observed the aura of that angel. It is white, pure, innocent, perfect. The angel Anael radiates splendorous light, divine light. Ineffable light. That precious light radiates from his spinal medulla. In reality, the spinal medulla is the candelabra of the 7 vases of the temple. The candelabra's oil of pure gold is the Christonic semen, which fornicators miserably ejaculate. The angels are full of light and fire because they are absolutely chaste. The demons are full of darkness because they spill the semen miserably. In order to create, there is no need to ejaculate the seminal liquor. The seed always passes through to the uterus without the need of ejaculating the semen. The multiple combinations of the infinite substance, the semen, are marvelous. After we invoked the angel Anael, we decided to meet Lilith, his tenebrous antithesis. On another night, the calmest one, the most silent one. We invoked Anael and Lilith simultaneously. We made the invocation in the astral body, within a small room. After a few instants, the angel Anael came at our call. The beautiful boy had an ineffable appearance. We knelt, and he blessed us. Next, the boy sat on a chair. We, filled with immense veneration, and with profound respect, asked the boy the favor of invoking Lilith, his antithesis. We told him, Master, we now invoke Lilith. We are investigating the pairs of opposites of philosophy. The angel Anael mentally invoked his antithesis. We heard some steps outside. In a few instants, another boy of the exact size of Anael, the angel of love, entered the room. He was Anael's antithesis. He was Lilith. We looked and saw in the night a terribly malignant boy. A boy with a terribly perverse face. That boy wore a black and dark blue tunic. Those are the colors of the infrared range. These same colors are used by the White Lodge, but within the ultraviolet range. Infrared is of the Black Lodge. Lilith is a demon, and his clothes are those of a demon. Lilith is a terrible fornicator. Only abyss and darkness radiate from his spinal medulla. We, the investigators, offered a chair to Lilith so that he could sit. The chair was placed in front of the angel Anael, therefore, the two antitheses of Venus sat face to face. It was something to be amazed at seeing these two antitheses face to face. Anael and Lilith. Love and counterlove which Lamblichus, the theurgist, caused to appear before the crowds in those olden times. Love and counterlove are here now, face to face. Lilith did not dare look at Anael's severe, radiant, and luminous face. We then exclaimed, Here is the mystery of the twin souls. Here is the pair of opposites of philosophy. We were drunk with wisdom. We were in an authentic state of terrible mystical exaltation. There are various types of twin souls. Lilith and Nehema are two terrible perverse demons. These two demons govern the spheres of the abyss. The Master Ilariax IX, in his third message of the Aryavarta Ashram on the Sacred Order of Tibet, says the following, and I quote, The Kabbalists say that there are two kingdoms of the Stygias in the infernos, Lilith, the mother of abortions, and Nehema, fateful and mortal beauty. When a man is unfaithful to the wife that heaven has given him and dedicates himself to the licentiousness of a sterile passion, God takes away his wife to throw him into the arms of Nehema. This queen of the Stygias knows how to seduce him with all the enchantments of virginity and love. She leads astray the hearts of fathers, pushing them to abandonment of their children. She makes married people dream of bereavement, and the men, consecrated to God, to dream of marriage. When she usurps the title of wife, it is easy to recognize her. She appears bald on the wedding day, since the long hair of the woman, being the veil of decency, is intercepted on that day. After the wedding, she becomes the prisoner of despair and becomes bored of existing. She preaches suicide and finally, violently abandons the home, leaving her victim marked with an infernal star between the eyes. The tradition adds that when sex controls the brain, this star is inverted, the pentagonal star, and the victim falls upside down, agitating his legs raised in the air. This is what the picture of the fool looks like in one of the 72 cards of the Bohemian Tarot. When profane science has systematically considered the initiates to be madmen, it is enough as a sign of conformity, the notorious fact that said science is incapable of distinguishing, in this case, between a fall and a descent. The alienist totally ignores the real existence of atom protoplastos. In the abyss, Lilith and Nehema live in eternal struggle. The depraved souls of Lilith no longer have any possibility of redemption. The victims of Nehema still have the possibility of coming out of the abyss. The problem is a sexual one. Demons are terrible fornicators. The five-pointed star symbolizes man. The brain should control sex. When the brain can no longer control sex, then the pentagonal star remains inverted, and man is sunk into the abyss. The demons can be symbolized by the inverted pentagonal star. Chapter 8. The Seventh Invocation. After having investigated all the preceding invocations of the great Conjuration of the Seven, which was left to us in olden times by the great King Solomon, we decided to investigate the last invocation, which, to the letter says, by the holy Elohim and by the names of the genii Kashiel, Sihaltiel, Aphiel, and Zerahiel, at the command of Oriphiel. Depart from us, Moloch. We deny thee our children to devour. Who could that Moloch be? Ancient tradition tells us about Moloch, an iron bull that was heated red-hot. The story tells us that many children were thrown into the horrible stomach of the iron bull. Much is said about Moloch, and we wanted to investigate the case. Outside the physical body, we called Moloch with the grand appellation of Peter of Apono. As we vocalized the mantrams, we had sunk into the atomic infernos of nature. We then saw immense multitudes of human beings who live in the abyss. Suddenly, among the multitudes, we saw a rider on his riding animal, the rider mounted on a lively charger. That rider looked like an Arab. He wore a blood-colored robe and covered his head with an oriental turban. The face of that man really looked like that of an Arab. His eyes, large and black, penetrating, thick eyebrows, strong and thick lips, straight nose, dark-colored. The man wore sandals. His entire appearance was really like that of a rider from Happy Arabia. He was Moloch, the terrible demon Moloch. Quickly, he came towards us on his lively charger. He opened a way among the multitudes, and shouting with a loud voice, addressed the director of the chain of the investigations, and told him, mockingly and perversely satisfied, "Ah, I thought you were up there, among the little angels. So, you have returned." Then the director of the great chain of investigations, full of courage, answered him, "You are mistaken, Moloch, I am only here to visit. I have come here to investigate you. That is all." Moloch went away. All of us, the investigators, returned to our physical body. Much later, we invoked his luminous antithesis, Oriphiel, the angel of Saturn. That angel governs the marvelous ray of Saturn. Having concluded this last invocation of the Conjuration of the Seven, we arrived at the following conclusions. Conclusions. First, the Conjuration of the Seven of Solomon the Sage is a Kabbalistic conjuration of immense power to combat the tenebrous legions. Second, the Conjuration of the Seven of Solomon the Sage should be utilized by all students of occultism before their rituals, or to cleanse their homes, or before going to sleep, or before doing their esoteric exercises. Thus, one drives away the tenebrous ones. Third, demons are terrible fornicators. They ejaculate the seminal liquor. Fourth, angels never ever ejaculate the seminal liquor. Fifth, when man does not ejaculate his seminal liquor, he awakens the kundalini, the fiery serpent of our magical powers, which is enclosed in the coccygeal chakra, the church of Ephesus, the base of the spinal medulla, which, in common people, is closed. The seminal vapor opens this orifice so that the fiery serpent may enter through there. As the serpent rises through the medullar channel, it opens all our powers, developing all our faculties. When the serpent, after having passed over the top of our head, reaches between our eyebrows, then comes the first great initiation of fire. We then have to work with the 7 degrees of the power of fire. This is how man becomes an authentic angel filled with power and glory. Sixth, when man ejaculates the seminal liquor in exercises of black magic, when he follows the doctrine of the Nicolaites, or simply, when he never repents of ejaculating the seminal liquor, then the fiery serpent of our magical powers, instead of rising through our middle or channel, descends to the atomic infernos of man, and becomes the horrible tail of Satan. 7th, it is terribly dangerous to invoke demons. We found ourselves in very serious and tremendous dangers when we were carrying out the investigation of the Conjuration of the Seven. If the student is not armed with the sword of justice, if he is not absolutely chaste, if he does not follow the path of sanctification, he could easily lose his life in those works. Or just as well, could arrive at the most terrible despair, the most frightening fear with all its very serious consequences for the physical body, on risking himself by invoking demons. 8th, High Theurgy should only be utilized to invoke angels. By means of High Theurgy, we can study at the feet of the Grand Master of Wisdom, converse with the angels, talk with the constructors of the universe. Talk with our internal God, face to face, in the superior worlds. 9th, we should sublimate all our sexual energies towards the heart. We should tread the path of absolute sanctity. 10th, after having known the abyss, we arrived at the conclusion that the demons, within the most frightening and horrible suffering, disintegrate in that abyss. That is the second death. Final conclusion. We, the investigators, in astral body, arrived at a house where one could only see mud, misery, indigence, hunger, and worst of all, terrible fornication. We saw a horrible, repugnant room. In that room, a terrible fornicating woman lived. That woman had already entered the abyss. She had already disembodied. In that filthy room in which she lived, only rags, mud, indigence, misery, suffering, dirt could be seen. When we were investigating, we were able to intuitively see the intimate relationship which exists between the tenebrous powers which feature in the Conjuration of the Seven and fornicating people. All that is the same thing, black magic. Fornication. Repugnant misery. We, the investigators, were able to see that irredeemable fornicators, in their last reincarnations, pay the karma of the most atrocious misery, the most disconcerting and horrible misery. Everyone who ejaculates. His seminal liquor, even if he is married, is a violator of the law. He is a fornicator. Therefore, the last reincarnation of every fornicator in which he enters the abyss is the most frightening and of terrible misery. In the Orient, the abyss, or the atomic infernos of nature, are known by the term of Avicii. Fornicators sink into those tenebrous regions after their last reincarnation filled with the most repugnant indigence ever known by the human generation. All sins will be forgiven except the sin against the Holy Spirit. The sexual energy is the creative energy of the third logos. The third logos is the Holy Spirit. The third logos radiates his energy in the fundamental vortex of every nebula. In the center of the tiniest atom, in everything that comes to life. In the human being, the energy of the third logos is the creative power of sex. When the human being dedicates himself to fornication, then that energy is exteriorized outwards and downwards, linking him to the tenebrous powers and to the Avicii. We should work in the laboratory of the Holy Spirit, sex, to transmute the creative power into light and fire. We should cause the energy of the third logos to flow inwards and upwards, to awaken our divine and ineffable creative powers. That is the magnum opus. Fornicators become indigenous and miserable shadows. Next, they sink into the frightening abyss. Samael Aun Weor.